Signs you are experiencing a spiritual awakening. Let's get into it. So, my name is Crystal Hoban, aka Crystal Clear Mystic. And the first sign, and probably the most obvious sign that you are having a spiritual awakening, is that you are even asking that question. If you are asking yourself, am I having a spiritual awakening? The reality is that you are being opened up to that frequency for a reason. And that is your intuition telling you this is something that's happening. This is something to understand. Take note. Okay. So, number one, if you're asking yourself that question, then yes, you most likely are. Okay. Now, another sign that you're having a spiritual awakening is that you may be more into watching tarot card readings, channeled messages, talking to psychics, all of those kinds of things that maybe in the past you were not open to at all. And now you're watching these things, you're engaging in these things, you're interested in learning more about them. That is another sign because you are now being opened to this frequency that you are not open to previously. So obviously, something within you has shifted or changed for you to open yourself up to that frequency. There's something within you that is saying, I need to learn more about this, or I need to understand more about this to further understand myself and my connection. So that would be another sign that you are having a spiritual awakening. Another sign that you are having a spiritual awakening would be having body chills. So, this can happen like full body chills, like you hear psychics talk about sometimes as they're doing readings. This could be chills in different parts of your body. This could be hot flashes, is another way that it shows up for some people, or getting really warm in certain parts of your body. And what this is your spirit or your soul, like resonating with whatever's happening. So usually this would happen when you're having a certain thought, and that's because that thought is true. And that's your body giving you a very physical response and reaction saying, yes, that is correct. Okay. And sometimes this starts in small ways and then becomes more intense over time as you become more open to the frequency. And as you clear out your chakras, you're more able to receive that kind of like body um, responses. And you're also more aware of the body reactions. So when our chakras are blocked, we're not as aware of those things. And we also don't feel them as intently. So that's something to be very aware of. Um, Another sign that you are having a spiritual awakening is that you are starting to notice angel numbers everywhere. And you're starting to wonder what they mean, why you're seeing them so much, and you're starting to look for them. So you're starting to seek them out and you're recognizing that they're actually everywhere and they always have been. Okay. So angel numbers is one of the signs that shows up a lot. Birds is another one that can be pretty prevalent for people. I would say a lot of the time it's blackbirds, and that's because the blackbirds are about shadow work and learning that you need to do shadow integration to fully awaken. So it's part of the path and the journey of awakening is the shadow integration work. And so seeing blackbirds would be you kind of being at a crossroads or a change that your soul is being asked to make that movement or not. So that may be another sign, and you may see them in amazing amounts of flocks. But that would be a sign, especially if you're starting to notice it more and pay attention to it more. Um, a sign that you're having a spiritual awakening that you may start to become aware of more is that you'll start to notice that there were little messages about the matrix being a matrix and being a reflection of you, right? Our physical experience being a reflection of our internal experience. You'll start to see that in movies more. You'll start to be more attracted to certain movies that have those messages. You'll start to be more attracted to shows that have those messages as well. And you'll just start to kind of see the world in a very different way than you ever have before. And it's kind of like this aha moment. You kind of have this like breakthrough of understanding and seeing things in a way that you just did not and were not open to previously. Okay. I've also seen this come up in the way of like what you've been able to handle around relationships shifts. So in the past, you may have been able to kind of make yourself small to maintain certain relationships and get together with certain people, and that shifts. So like you become very uncomfortable with that. There's certain people that you used to spend time with that you enjoyed spending time with that you don't anymore. Um and like it feels unbearable, especially in the beginning of a spiritual awakening. It feels absolutely unbearable to continue to sit around those kinds of things or stay in those situations. And that could be because of what they're talking about, but it also could just be that you're becoming more sensitive to energy and you're not aligned with the energy of that person anymore in some ways. So, you're going to feel real discomfort with certain people. You do become more sensitive to energies as well, so that would be another sign, and that can look like going out into public places and being completely scattered thought-wise, like feeling completely overwhelmed, like going to the store or going out in general, and maybe even thoughts being completely scattered. It could also show up depending on like your own psychic abilities, like and what you're tapped into. It could also show up as like you becoming emotionally overwhelmed. And I would say for a lot of people in the beginning, that turns into anxiety. Like it's a feeling on edge, kind of anxious, overwhelm that you're feeling when you go out into public places, because now you're just more tapped in. You're more sensitive than you were previously to energies, and you're just more aware of it. So that would be another way that you may be showing up as having a spiritual awakening, is that sensitivity to energy is just completely increased. Um Other ways that it might show up if you're having a spiritual awakening is that you are kind of like going down the rabbit hole. So, because you're open to the frequency, a lot of the time, what happens when you first spiritually awaken is you're like, what the actual F is going on? And you start to like look up all this different type of information and look at all this different type of stuff that you would never have looked at before. And so a lot of the time, people who spiritually awaken, they kind of get stuck in this rabbit hole of like what is going on, and they start to gather all of this information to the point where it's like kind of complete overload. Like you overload yourself with all of this new information you've never seeked into or looked into really before, or maybe you've heard and you're like, oh, that's interesting, but you're very interested and you want to know every little piece and understanding, especially if you are a very like intelligent or analytical person. That will kind of be what it will look like for you, is like this over engagement and understanding what is going on and trying to think through it or wrap your mind around it. So when you're online and you're getting stuck in rabbit holes, or you're looking up certain things and you're reading all of the information you can find about whatever it may be, the quantum field, or past life experiences, or soul recognition, right? These are things that you might look up. Twin flames would be another one. These are things you might look up and just become completely enthralled in and have a really hard time not reading all of the information you probably can to try to like understand what was going on. One thing that clients ask me a lot when they come to see me is like, they consistently ask themselves, is what I am thinking real? So, like, am I actually having a spiritual awakening? Like, is this energy and experience real? Like, are these thoughts real? And the answer is yes. if you are thinking those things to yourself, then it was most likely true for you. Spiritual awakenings are really interesting because they really are very individual. Everybody experiences them so differently, and everybody has different trigger points within them, as well as different signs that they are active. And so, if you're having thoughts about it and you've never thought about it before, you're probably having a spiritual awakening. And if you're experiencing it, then it's real. And I think that's like one of the biggest mind F's when you have a spiritual awakening is like, I'm having this experience. Is this real? Is this actually happening? Or is this all in my mind? Right. That's a sign that you're trying to make sense of it mentally, when spiritual awakenings don't really make sense mentally, to be very honest with you. It's something that you just feel and know, and it does conflict with what we know as a society and what we are taught as a society logically. So when these two things are in conflict, they create anxiety. And so if you are fighting your heart and your mind, that's information that you're probably like overthinking something that doesn't make actual logical sense. And I know that sounds a little confusing, but it's more of like a knowing and a feeling than it is something that you can logically make sense of and think your way through. And if you are trying to do that in a spiritual awakening experience, you will drive yourself crazy. I did that. You go wild. Just heads up there. And it's like really not helpful, but you get stuck on this like cycle of like, what the hell is going on? There must be something wrong with me. I'm crazy. Da 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 da. Right. And this is kind of where people get like knocked out of like reality into a place of like, they call it spiritual psychosis. And so there's a very fine line between like that conflicting thought between mind and heart that can bring you into that spiritual psychosis where you are just losing your ever loving mind and you don't know what's real compared to not's real, right? Like when you're in that space, you're fighting your heart and your mind. And so it's a lot easier said than done. But really, if you're knowing it and you're feeling it, then it's real. And that's part of the things that you have to learn on a spiritual awakening journey, is that we are taught to ignore our intuition. We are taught to ignore our gut as a society. We are taught to ignore what we feel. And we are supposed to only make sense of things as they visually are and as they make sense within society to be. I hope that makes sense. So, so part of moving through a spiritual awakening is recognizing that what you think does not matter. It's what you feel and what you know that matters. And people get caught in that kind of like conflict in a spiritual awakening for a really long time, sometimes years, if we're being honest. And it will drive you freaking nuts. And the reality is that the awakening is meant for you to turn inward and recognize that you have all of the answers that you need inside of yourself, and that you cannot think through these things. It's a feeling and it's a knowing, and it's learning to trust that unwavering. And this is where you hear about sovereignty and being able to fully stand in your sovereignty and self trust. So, I did go through a bunch of different signs and what it looks like to kind of help you. If I miss some, I'd be interested. You can go ahead and write them in the comments and I'll comment on them and whatnot. And I mean, there's so many, and it really is so different for different people. So um, I hope that this makes sense for you guys. And if you need some help or support or one on one, you can take a look in my bio. I offer coaching and I offer psychic readings and things like psychic guidance, spiritual guidance. Let me know what you need, and I got you if you feel connected to. And just know that this is something happening in a huge way everywhere right now. And you're going to get through this and you're going to be okay. And just learn to trust yourself. Only you can know the answers to your own journey. Okay. Love and light.